The Dallas Cowboys had an epic comeback over the Philadelphia Eagles, but they had to overcome a 21-0 deficit. How in the world did they get to that point? We'll break it down next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us the #1 sports podcast network. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. He is Landon McCool. And on today's show, we are breaking down all of the all-22 notes that Landon and I saw on tape. We're going to talk about some coaching decisions, some of the offensive line play. But, Landon, we need to talk about how the Cowboys got down so much so early in this game, because it really was a comedy of errors.
Yeah, it really was. And I think, ultimately, once we examine this a little bit, the interesting thing to me is that, and we can kind of talk about it at the end of the segment, it actually made me feel better about how the team is right now. Like, not because of all the things they did, but because of the ultimate outcome. I'll explain later. Let's just dive into some of the mishaps that happened early on in this game. Go on with the first group. We're going to try to do this sequentially.
So it started with the Cowboys having the ball, which generally you don't want to have the ball when you're at home because your crowd is pumped up, but they move the ball down the field fairly well. They get to 4th and 3 at the 50-yard line. Okay. And then they have the incomplete pass to Javonte Williams. Thought Dak needed to have a better ball, whatever, right? That happens. Yeah. I didn't mind the going for it on 4th down. Just not a great play. Philadelphia on the next drive, they go 7 plays, 50 yards, touchdown. Honestly, pretty good game script for Philadelphia there. Like they put together some really good plays. Not a lot of like mental mistakes, just a well-rounded drive for them. This is where things start to get wild for them. So it starts out on the kickoff, right? They have a penalty on the kickoff that puts them back at their own 19-yard line. And then they go 3 and out basically pretty quickly. They had a drop on 3rd and 6 to CeeDee Lamb. And then Landon, things really started to fall apart of this next drive. And I'm going to stop after this one. But next drive, it's 7-0. You get Philadelphia into 2nd and 16, okay? They have a 2-yard run to Saquon Barkley. It's 3rd and 14, 4-yard pass to Cooper. And now it's 4th and 10, and Philadelphia's punting from the 24-yard line. I don't know why the Cowboys were so aggressive trying to block that punt, but they have the Ryan Flournoy play, which we could talk about. And then 3 plays later, it's 3rd and 10. You get off the field, and Jadeveon Clowney lines up offsides.
So much to talk about there. And just that group. I mean, but like, let's start with, the decision on 4th down on the first drive, right? Like, I think, first of all, I agree. I think that was the right decision. You get a little bit better pass, or if Williams can kind of tip it to himself, you probably convert that. Honestly, I think Ferguson had broken open right as Dak was about to throw the ball. That's probably where they should have gone. You live and you learn. I don't hate the 4th down call there. It's an aggressive call. You're trying to win this football game. I understand that. There's so much there. The thing with Flournoy, like, ultimately, Flournoy, tipped the ball, and that shouldn't have been a penalty. And I think the NFL has actually come out and said that as much. But the thing that's frustrating to me is that it wasn't even Flournoy that got called for the penalty. It was Leofau. And Leofau basically, punched the punter in the head. So they're basically could have been called a personal foul.
I mean, Leofau deserved a penalty if Flournoy, even if they would have reviewed it, yes.
Even if they would have reviewed it, even if they would have returned, because Leofau basically punched the guy in the head. So again, another stupid mistake. You get into. So wait, where did we leave off? I'm surprised. I forgot.
No. So that was the drive that put Philadelphia up 14-0.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, whatever. You had 2 bad mistakes in that drive. This is a chance to settle things down. And honestly, it starts off pretty well. You get on 1st down, you get a 20-yard run to Javonte Williams.
Yes.
You get a deep pass to CeeDee Lamb where CeeDee just kind of lost it in the lights. I don't know what happened. You get a big play to CeeDee Lamb over the middle of the field, but he fumbles it going down. Now his elbow was down. CeeDee I think CD knew pretty quickly that he was down, but it was still way closer than you would expect, right? And it was just one of those things, like it was kind of a microcosm of CeeDee Lamb's game where just nothing felt right in that one. And then on the very next play, because you're down so many running backs and you don't trust Jaden Blue, you're putting KaVontae Turpin in the backfield, and he fumbles the ball running into the back of Tyler Guyton.
And that's where it felt like after that, that's where it truly started to feel like. And then also the next drive when the Eagles have the ball and you get a couple of penalties that kind of, continue to help you out. Those were the moments where it really started to feel like, man, this isn't our game. Like if the ball is just not bouncing the right way, all the luck is happening against you. And then on top of that, you're not executing well. You're not playing good football. And it just felt like, everything was going wrong at that point. And you weren't going to be able to dig yourself out of the hole.
And we're not done. It's 14-0, but let's continue to go. So the next drive, the Cowboys have the fumble, right? The KaVontae Turpin fumble.
Yeah.
Philadelphia, they get themselves into a hole. It's 2nd and 20. Okay. They throw the ball on first down to Saquon Barkley. It's 2nd and 20 from Philly's 40. You give up an 8-yard run to Tank Bigsby when it was so clear they were running the ball. And an 8-yard run on 2nd and 20 doesn't feel like a big deal, but it got Philadelphia into 3rd and somewhat manageable, because if that was 3rd and 17, 3rd and 18, they're probably running a screen or they're just running a draw. Instead, they take a deep shot down the field to Devontae Smith. He gets 41 yards, and 2 plays later, they score a touchdown. And now the score is 21-0, Landon, and it feels like it's out of reach already.
And we're not even at the bottom, right?
No.
Like I think to me, the bottom is, with like at the end of this, where we'll get into it, right? Where the Cowboys get into this drive and get a little bit further. But at this point, like, again, you just feel like, CeeDee's fumbled. You somehow recover the ball. You somehow, don't actually have a fumble there, but you just felt like, man, it's coming. Obviously, the next play, Turpin turns the ball over. And then the Eagles get the ball and are moving the ball. You think that you have them bottled up, and then they are able to get a first down after being down 1st and 20. It just, and then like, again, it was another situation where you had them and then you let them go. And then right after you let them go, they immediately score a touchdown, and you feel broken, right? You just feel like it's not going to work.
There's still 11 minutes and 30 seconds when the Cowboys start this next drive in the second quarter. So as bad as that first quarter went, you still have time. And honestly, that drive started out really well. KaVontae Turpin had a really nice return. The Cowboys started the ball at the 40. They had a Malik Davis run. They had a couple 5-yard passes. And
you overcame some penalties too. Like you did do some screw up, but you were able to overcome it. So like, okay, maybe you're shrugging some of this off a little bit.
Exactly. You had Jake Ferguson false start. You're able to overcome that. You hit a deep ball to George Pickens, and then you hit Jake Ferguson on a beautiful throw up the seam where I thought he could have done a better job of trying to reach out into the end zone to score. That ends up being a huge play because on 1st and goal, they run a direct snap from shotgun, which I don't know why you're running out of shotgun, and the Wildcat with Javonte Williams doesn't get anything. On 2nd and 1, you have a Tyler Guyton false start. So now it's 2nd and goal from the 5.5 or so, and you feel like you probably can't burn another play to run the ball. So you're throwing it out of shotgun, and that is the interception to CeeDee Lamb, and the game just felt completely over at that point.
Yeah. At that point, you just like, at that point, you started to like, if you were trying to root for the game to somehow turn around, you were rooting for moments. You were just like, they have to find a way to get a stop when you just don't feel like they can get a stop. And it just felt like the Cowboys offense was broken. You finally had your best moment in the game. And it just all disappeared right in front of your eyes.
And with all of that, the Cowboys were able to get a stop on the next drive. And again, it doesn't end though, later. Like they're down 21-0. Okay. They have this big play to Javonte Williams. Now they're in the red zone. Okay. It's 1st and 10 from Philadelphia's 13. And Tyler Guyton gets a tripping call. So now it's 1st and 25 from Philadelphia's 28. It feels like this thing is going to be over. And then you get a 10-yard pass to CeeDee Lamb. You get a 17-yard pass to Jake Ferguson. And then on the next play, George Pickens scores from 1 yard out, and you're right back into the game. So as bad as everything went, and it did, I mean, almost everything went wrong, that drive right before halftime was enough to at least give them some momentum going into halftime where they felt like they could maybe steal this game.
Yeah, and I think we're going long, but I think the last thing I just want to sum this up, and is the reason we brought all this up is, to me, it was heartening because it feels like the Cowboys were the more consequential of these two teams. It felt like it was the Cowboys hurting themselves and the Eagles kind of, taking advantage, but not necessarily that they were the better of the two teams. And by the second half, if you go back and rewatch this game, I think the Cowboys were the more talented of the two teams on the field, and it was showing.
And I want to dive into that a little bit more because, I'm not a traditional Cowboys homer that just believes their team is great. But honestly, going back and watching the tape, I had a similar conclusion. Let's get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's not a better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game, or if you just want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late game push. Like, I love watching the NBA. I really love the fourth quarters. We've had just an incredible start to the season. So make sure you're getting in on that action, checking out all of those live lines over on FanDuel. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head over to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We'd also like to thank you for making us the #1 sports podcast network. I wanted to talk more about some conclusions. We'll talk about some coaching stuff here in a little bit. I don't even think the Cowboys played a particularly clean second half because there were drops. There were some missed field goal in there. There were a lot of, there were penalties, and yet they still were able to win this game despite the worst first quarter I think I've ever seen them play. And I honestly had the same conclusion coming out of this game. The Cowboys are not the better team for the 2025 season. But I think from this point on, I do think the Cowboys are better. I think this team has just dramatically changed with Quinnen Williams, with DeMarvion Overshown coming back, and with George Pickens really getting into a rhythm. They're hard to stop.
The Cowboys had to play this game on hard mode.
Yeah.
And the Eagles got to play it for a lot of it on easy. Like, the Eagles definitely suffered some injuries that affected the game later on. We're definitely going to recognize that. But the Cowboys, first of all, suffered some injuries of their own. They lost their left tackle at a certain point, and I think he was playing, despite what we said about the penalties earlier. I thought Guyton was playing fantastic football outside of that, and then suddenly he gets hurt, and Nate Thomas comes in, and they don't miss a beat. And then on top of that, your #1 wide receiver has one of the worst games that I think I've ever seen.
CeeDee Lamb, by the way.
Yeah, CeeDee Lamb. Wow, boy. It has one of his worst games of the season, and you're going against, probably the best defense in football, right? I mean, at least as far as organized wise, coaching wise, and statistically, right? I mean, I don't think there's too much doubt. And the fact that you were able to do what you were able to do, and partially, like, the part of the reason we talked about in the first segment is to show, like, the Cowboys put themselves a lot into this situation. It's not like the Eagles on a snap-to-snap basis were completely dominating the Cowboys on offense. The Cowboys were throughout the game stopping Saquon Barkley and the run. It was, Saquon Barkley never got started. It wasn't like he suddenly stopped. The Cowboys were dominating the line of scrimmage at certain points for, I would say, more than 3/4 of this game. So the fact that they put themselves in this terrible hole and then came out of this hole kind of proves the point that they were the team that was actually of consequence of this throughout this whole situation. They were dominating and dictating what was happening on the field. If you want to break it down from a 10,000-foot view or down to an individual view, go watch Tyler Booker versus Jalen Carter. If you expected to see Tyler Booker win as many of his reps against Jalen Carter as he did, then you must be a soothsayer or something, or Tyler Booker's mother potentially. Like, it was crazy how much he was able to take care of a guy that is, an all-pro defensive tackle. The Cowboys got plays from almost all their big players except for CeeDee Lamb. And that's what was amazing is without CeeDee Lamb contributing and having a huge day, you were able to get what you needed out of Pickens. You were able to get what you needed out of Dak. You were able to get what you needed out of Javonte Williams. And then ultimately Ferguson, who didn't start out great, I think Ferguson had some really great plays at key moments when you needed him. And this offense was able to thrive and score when you needed to. And then on the other side of the ball, it's very clear that defense just was in control of the game in the second half. Like we were holding our breath, but the truth of the matter is the Cowboys had him locked up and the Hurts didn't really have a lot of answers for what to do, especially when he was trying to drop back to pass.
Yeah, 107 yards in the final 8 drives for Philadelphia. I think that's, I'm not good at math, like 13 and a half yards per drive. I think 45% of those yards came on 2 plays. So, I mean, they were pretty dominant on that side of the ball in the second half. Back to CeeDee Lamb really quickly. I think if CeeDee Lamb has a B- CeeDee Lamb game, like what we've seen over the last 4 years, the Cowboys probably win this game by double digits. I mean, because if he runs a better route on the Dak Prescott interception, or if he just is more physical at the catch point, you probably score a touchdown there. If he doesn't drop the touchdown from the 1 yard line on the third down play, I mean, you go up 7 with 2 minutes left in that game.
If he catches the third down, that second third down on that second series, you don't go 3 and out on the second drive of the whole game and allowing them to score again.
And I think if my memory serves, there was another third down where he dropped the pass in the middle of the field, and it made the Cowboys have to settle for a longer field goal, which we didn't even mention. They missed a field goal in the second half where if you make that one, the game is probably a little bit different. I don't expect that to be the norm for CeeDee Lamb. I expect him to bounce back, but I think it just shows like it wasn't like everything broke their way in the second half for them to win this game. In fact, a lot still went against them, but over time, the talent did start to win out. And that's crazy for me to say for a team that I've been saying all year, I think has the best roster in the league.
Yeah, I mean and again, I'm going to recognize that the Eagles suffered some injuries, and certainly that contributed to them. But Jalen Carter was still out there; those corners were still out there, and the Cowboys were winning those matchups on our side of the ball, right? And on the opposite side of the ball, Brown was out there, Smith was out there, Saquon Barkley and Hurts were out there. Right. And they weren't winning those matchups in the end of the game the way that they needed to in order to win the game. Right. And so the Cowboys, look, they're still young. This season may or may not happen at all, like as far as any kind of postseason play. But this is the kind of hope that you want to have for this roster, this young roster heading towards the end of this year and going into next year.
I want to talk about the coaching really quickly because I actually thought Matt Eberflus did a really good job of coming up with a scheme to help slow down this Eagles rushing attack. But Brian Schottenheimer, I still think he is pretty green as a head coach. You could still see it as a play caller. Like you and I were talking today, like he can be a little bit emotional as a play caller, and you feel that in some of these games. And I think like an example of this is like when they had 2nd and goal from the 1 yard line after the Javonte Williams Wildcat run. Just run the ball 2 more times, be physical, just get downhill. That offensive line was mauling them. I understand that, you're trying to fool them a little bit with a quick play action, but Javonte Williams is pretty good in short yardage. Just give him the rock.
I agree. I think there's some times when you just feel like he could be a little bit less, you say emotional because he says emotional when he talks about it. So I agree. It's just like there's improvements here everywhere. I will point out that I think it's funny that, speaking of Eberflus real quickly, that they talked about in Philadelphia that the offensive line had not looked at or been told that they were going to get any 5-man fronts. Unfortunately, none of the Eagles offense were subscribers to Locked On Cowboys podcast because we've been talking about that for weeks and it's still training camp. So maybe you guys should be some subscribers every day.
There you go. There you go. One more thing. Did you agree with the decision late in the game when the score was 21-21 to go for it on 4th down and not kick the field goal?
I thought it was 50-50 to be honest.
Okay.
But I think that, where you were, you needed points. And if they had tried to kick the field goal, we would all be complaining that, hey, this is a game where you need the points. So I at least understand it.
I actually really like Brian Schottenheimer's answer where he said he trusted the defense. And usually the decision is, well, let's kick the field goal and trust their defense. I actually believe it's the opposite of like, hey, if we don't get this, we're going to pin Philly at the 3-yard line. We trust our defense. Hey, maybe they'll get a first down or two. We trust them to eventually get a stop. And that is exactly what played out. The Cowboys ended up getting really good field position. They needed 30 yards to get the field goal, and that's what happened. So in some ways, I think Brian Schottenheimer made the correct decision.
In other ways, maybe he just trusted his defense for the first time this season.
Well, maybe that's true. Let's talk about some other notes that we had after watching the All 22, including some notes in the Cowboys offensive line. We'll get to that next.
Today's show is brought to you by our friends over there at Peloton. Look, folks, it's time to break through the busiest time of the year with a brand new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus that's powered by Peloton IQ. It's Peloton's most elevated technology and equipment yet that gives you real-time guidance, and it gives you endless ways to move, whether you want to work out by yourself or if you want to work out with your favorite instructor, like my personal favorite, Alex Toussaint. He always gets me fired up to tackle the day. And the thing I like about Peloton, it helps me achieve more in less times. They have features that help you plan, stay motivated, track your progress, and Peloton IQ also provides personalized workout plans and recommendations. That's something that I use right now during the busiest time of the year covering the NFL. They plan my workouts for me based on my mood, my vibe, and also my favorite instructors. So make sure you check it out and use it, because it also helps you correct your form in real time, and it maximizes your reps. It counts your reps so that you can do it smarter, safer, and more efficient. Let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL podcast. 2 shows every single day. 1 in the morning with Tyler Rowland, 1 in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins, available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, this is one of my favorite segments of the week. This is just our notebook dump where some of the things that we saw on tape that stood out to us. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing, and I kind of hinted at it earlier, was just Tyler Booker's performance against, specifically when he was going against Jalen Carter. I just think he's come so far, and this is why you drafted a guy like this, is to be able to play against elite players, to match up against a guy like Jalen Carter. He didn't win all his reps by any stretch of the imagination. But again, if you're talking about, like, if you're trying to imagine in your mind how many you could possibly win against a guy like Jalen Carter, you just hope that you survive some. And I think he won the majority of his reps, and it was key in some of those interior runs. I think specifically Williams had a couple, like that 20-yard run where he was able to get sealed off on the backside a little bit, and they ran to the left side. So I thought the offensive line play overall, and honestly, I think we could say this about both sides of the trenches. I thought that the Cowboys won the battle on both sides of the trenches in a way that I just seriously don't think the Eagles were expecting to lose.
I want to mention Nate Thomas, who came in this game because Tyler Guyton went down with a high ankle injury. It seems pretty unlikely that he's going to play this week against the Chiefs. I wonder if Thomas, the more he plays, the more he could be exposed. But I thought in this game, he came in a situation where the Cowboys were basically in pass mode the entire second half, and he held up well. I think he gave up 2 pressures. One of the things that I noticed right away is they weren't giving him a ton of help. Like, they were putting him on an island. And yeah, there were a couple of times where guys got up the field a little bit on him, but what a luxury it is to have a tackle that you can put into the game and not feel like it's going to be a disaster. I mean, I remember, like, during the Jason Garrett era, where you would have one singular offensive line injury and the entire offense would collapse. Not the case.
Yeah, and again, like you and I had talked about a lot in the offseason, when you have injuries to the offensive line, or honestly, when we were just talking about Guyton, we were just talking about, like, having a young offensive tackle out there. It's nice to have the luxury to be able to put a tight end out there to help him. But the truth of the matter is that the Cowboys haven't done that very much for Guyton or for the tackles that they put in there when Guyton and or Steele have been out of the game. So and look, I mean, obviously there was a time when they were concerned about Steele's play a little bit, because there was an open competition between Nate Thomas and Steele, and maybe that was more about the way that Thomas was playing more than about the way Steele's playing. But either way, it amounted to the fact that the Cowboys don't feel like, when they have Thomas on the field, that they need to give him a whole bunch of extra help because they feel like he can handle the situation. Now, the question is, and I think that that's what we're going to see a little bit more, how does he hold up in the run game? We know he's a big, strong guy, but it's still a very different thing to kind of function in the run game, which is going to be important against the Kansas City this weekend. I based on what we saw in this game against the Eagles, I think he's going to do great. But let's see if he has like a level of consistency or of a week of exposure on 4 days rest, no less, if that changes things a little bit.
One other note that I had, Donovan Ezraku only had one pressure in this game. And honestly, Philadelphia did a pretty good job of containing him. It's kind of back-to-back weeks that he struggled as a pass rusher. Having said that, he didn't have a bad game. And this is the value of having, a guy like Ezraku who has made some huge strides as a run defender. You feel really good about keeping him out there, even if he's not winning as a pass rusher, because not only is he not bad against the run, or is he average against the run, I think he's actually a plus run defender, and that's a really nice luxury to have.
Yeah, I mean, he's your starter. Like he can function as your starter now already because he can play so well on the run. And look, the passing game stuff, like it's going to develop as time goes on, and we'll see it kind of come and go at points. But if he can be a plus run defender while he's learning on the job of being a pass rusher, he's a rookie. Like this is like, to get this out of him as a rookie has been absolutely outstanding. You can have first round picks that you don't have this much, production, at least taking snaps and playing viably as a starting defensive end. So overall, great season so far for Ezraku, and especially with that addition of Quentin Williams has really helped him.
And I know PFF grades aren't the end all be all, so just take this with a grain of salt. But not only is he the highest graded rookie edge defender, he's the highest graded rookie edge defender defending the run this season. I don't think any of us anticipated that. That's pretty cool. All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen of the day. Check out the channel on YouTube. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Landon on Twitter @McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.